Jimmy Butler, he's a very interesting player to me.
Just goes to show the offense for the Dallas Stars could not keep up, and when the defense needed to step up, the Lightning's offense just overpowered them.
It makes it almost impossible for their bats to get going or have any confidence in the locker room when you're getting absolutely hosed on the defensive end.
He's like, oh shoot, I don't know where to go with the ball because I haven't been able to think.
It's their defense, man. Mika Fitzpatrick, T.J. Watt.
You saw Luka. I'm very intrigued to see how Luka bounces back after his first playoff series.
For next season, there are massive free agents like Giannis. And if Giannis goes to a team like the Heat, like I said before, I expect them to win the championship. 4 teams who could win the AFC in my mind, legitimately. Steelers, Chiefs, Titans, Ravens.
Stay undefeated when they face the mighty Cowboys with Garrett Gilbert and Tony Pollard.
It was a great series. Game 4 was one of the best games I've ever watched in my entire life.
So happy when the Astros lost because it would definitely be a 2020 thing to have the Astros win a World Series, and then you have to hear them.
Now LeBron's a 4-time champion, and Anthony Davis gets his first.
It's unacceptable.
Yeah, I was impressed by their game. Braden Point, Andre Palat, Nikita Kucherov. That was the best line in the playoffs, no doubt.
I think you have 2 established number 1 wide receivers in Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup, and I think you have an emerging star in CeeDee Lamb. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the 22nd episode of Outsiders Opinions. We recorded over 20 videos, so let us know what your favorite video has been so far in the comments. Also, if this is your first time hearing our voices, please make sure to listen to our trailer as it gives an explanation about the goal of our podcast. Today, we will be doing the predictions for playoff teams in the East and West for the NBA. So I'll start with my predictions, and then Austin will give his predictions, and then we'll go from there. So for the West, I have at the number 1 seed, the Lakers. I really like what the Lakers did this offseason. I like the addition of Montrezl Harrell, and then the runner-up for the 6-man in I'm forgetting his name right now. I don't know why.
Dennis Schroeder.
So that's a big addition, and I like the addition of Marc Gasol as he brings a new element that the previous centers didn't. And I think LeBron's going to do well with the squad, and it's going to take him to the number 1 seed. Then at the 2nd seed, I have the Nuggets. As I think Michael Porter Jr. is going to make a big step, and I think we saw Jamal Murray take a big offensive step in the playoffs as he went off, and I think they kept Paul Millsap, which I think was a big thing. They did lose Jeremy Grant and Mason Plumlee, but I think this young core is going to keep going, and they're going to make it to the number 2 seed. Then at number 3, I have the LA Clippers. They lost Montrezl Harrell, which I think is huge, and he was a big player for them. And just having him and Lou Will on the bench made it incredible. And then I think there's going to start. This is Kawhi's final year here right now. He didn't sign an extension. Paul George did, so I think there's going to be some tension about Kawhi not staying with them and how the Clippers' future doesn't look much better for the next coming years as they traded a lot of those picks for Paul George. And I think there's going to be some tension that's going to keep them from working together. And that new coaching staff, I don't know how good they're going to be able to get their stuff in. Well, it was a good move, but it takes time. Then at number 4, I have the Jazz. Donovan Mitchell. They really stayed together, and I think Donovan Mitchell is going to build on his success in the postseason. And with Rudy Gobert and Michael Conley, I think Mike Conley, they're going to do well. And then at number 5, I have the Golden State. They took a year off, and while they did lose Klay Thompson, they got, as Austin was talking about in our last episode, Kelly Oubre to help. Like, you can't replace Klay Thompson. He's incredible, but to at least mitigate it. And then they have James Wiseman, and then you got Steph Curry back, and I think they're going to do well, and they're going to be the Warriors we've seen the past couple of years. Not the last one, but the years before that. Then number 6, I have the Portland Trailblazers. I like they brought back Enes Kanter, and I think Nurkic is healthy and hopefully he can get better, and they can do. And they also have Carmelo, and I think Carmelo really fits in with Portland, and I think this is going to be the first full year with Carmelo as they added him late in the season or in the middle of the season. Then they had the lockdown because of COVID. So I think they're going to do well, and that gets them to the 6th seed. Then number 7, I have the Mavericks. They're going to make the playoffs. I like the additions. I think Luka is going to take a next step, but Kristaps coming in late to the season, I think is going to really hurt him. If he was at the start, I think he could be higher. But I also like the additions, and same with Jalen Brunson. He'll be back, but I'm not sure about Dwight Powell, and that's why I have him at 7. Number 8, the final playoff spot, was really difficult, but I have the Minnesota Timberwolves. I like the addition of Anthony Edwards. They brought back Ricky Rubio, and I think he's good for the bench. And I think D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns are going to work well together, and that's what I have getting to the final spot. So, Austin, what teams did you have?
For my West, I had the Clippers at 1. The reason for this is I feel like they had, even though their losses were big, I love the addition of Serge Ibaka. I feel like they needed a new coach in the locker room, and Paul George will definitely have something to prove this season, as he did not perform well in the playoffs. This will also be a new year of bonding between Kawhi and Paul George, and I feel like it is necessary for them to become closer teammates. My number 2 is the Lakers. I don't feel like the Lakers are going to try as hard to become the 1 seed, but they're not going to fall off or anything. I feel like LeBron will take a step back this year. Like, he'll still average 20, 25 points and 7 assists and 7 rebounds, but I don't feel like he'll be as good this year as he has been in previous years. Anthony Davis, I also feel will take a step back statistically speaking, because he won't need to carry all that much because he has LeBron in his team, and they won't be vying for that number 1 seed as they have been in previous years. For 3, I have the Mavs. I feel like the additions they've made, even though they'll be out, Kristaps will be out at the beginning of the season, I feel like Luka will take that next step, and if he can get a 3 ball consistently around 35%, I feel like they could become a contender. And while I don't see them as a contender this season, where like I don't feel like they have a good chance of winning the championship this year, in the future they're definitely going to be one of the top teams in the league. My number 4 is the Jazz. I feel like Donovan Mitchell is going to have something to prove after the Nuggets ran him out of the building in Game 7. It was a close game. I'm just saying that Donovan Mitchell was visibly upset because of his performance at the end of the game. Mike Conley will also come with something to prove, and they just signed Rudy Gobert, and he'll have to make something out of his new contract. 5, I have the Suns. Chris Paul is one of the most underrated players of all time. He's been the best player wherever he goes, and that includes with the Rockets, because I don't feel like James Harden outplayed him in any of the games that they really had, even though his stats may have shown differently. Devin Booker will now have a leader on his team that he doesn't have to do everything for his team, and they will hopefully make the playoffs for the first time in a very long time. 6, I have the Nuggets. Their loss of Jeremy Grant, I feel like, really hurts them. While they do have some players who are coming into their own, like MPJ, Michael Porter Jr., and Bobo will start this season on the bench, but he'll start playing this year. It'll be interesting to see how they do. I just don't know if they make it past some of these other teams above them, especially during the regular season. However, I could see them beating the Mavs in the playoffs if this is how it goes, because of the pedigree that they've had before they made conference championships. They have many years now been to the playoffs in a row. For 7, I have the Trailblazers. I feel like they will make the playoffs this year, because I feel like Dame and CJ and Carmelo and Robert Covington, that's enough to make the playoffs. They should be destroyed by the Lakers, though, in the first round if those do come together. There's not really much more to say. And 8 is the Warriors. I would be shocked if the Warriors missed the playoffs again. Steph Curry is the best shooter in the game right now, and I don't feel like that's going to change for years to come. Kelly Oubre and James Wiseman will have a lot to prove this season, but I feel like that's good for young players like them. That would bring about another 1 versus 8, but it's flipped now. The Clippers are the 1 seed and the Warriors are the 8 seed, and I feel like the Warriors could definitely give the Clippers a run for their money. The Clippers have yet to win a championship, and the Warriors have championship pedigree all throughout their roster, especially with Draymond and Steph. And yeah, that's my prediction for this season.
It seems like we sort of agree on where Portland is. I just have them one higher, but they're relatively small or small difference in ours. And then we disagree on the Mavs, which I find funny, as you are first Wizards fan, and then I'm first Mavs. But of course, the Mavs are second. But I just find that funny. You got them at 3. I got them at number 7. What are your thoughts on mine?
I like your list. I feel like you over emphasize how the Nuggets did during the playoffs. I don't feel like the Nuggets will be a 2 seed. I could see them being as high as 4, but I don't really see them being one of those top 3 teams, as I feel like the Mavs, Lakers, and Clippers have really set themselves off, at least at the start during the preseason, um, especially with the additions they made during free agency and the draft. But I should say this now before we get too far into the video. Just because we feel this way does not mean that it will not majorly change during the season. Anything can happen in an NBA season, and if key injuries or one player starts to really show how they can really take over a team, it could really change. Your thoughts about mine?
Yeah. I feel there's definitely an argument for most of the teams in the West. It was hard for me to keep off the Suns, but I'm just not sure of like the people beyond Chris Paul and Devin Booker. But yeah, your list seems good, and I was a little surprised by the Clippers, just because I think the Lakers are so stacked. But I think we can move on to the East.
Yeah, you can start again.
Okay, so at number 1, I got the Bucks with the addition of Drew Holiday. I think that really helps with adding Drew Holiday to Chris Middleton and Giannis, and I think we see Giannis take a big step with shooting, maybe at the arc, maybe do better, and I think that would just really help. And I think he'll have something to prove, especially with that loss to the Heat. Speaking of the Heat, I have the Heat at number 2. I think we're going to see a lot more from their postseason success. I think they're going to do a lot better. This is after 1 year with Jimmy Butler in, and I think they're going to do much better. Then number 3, I have the Sixers. I really like the addition of um, why am I forgetting his name as the coach? I can't help me out, Austin. I don't
For the
know.
Heat.
Sixers.
Oh, for the Sixers, they got Doc Rivers.
I don't know why I blanked, but Doc Rivers, and I think he'll really help the Sixers as we've seen him take some squads and do well. As we saw, you mentioned it, the Clippers versus Warriors. He brought they brought a fight, and I also like the Sixers' additions of Seth Curry and Danny Green. I really, as I said in previous videos, Danny Green's going to bounce back, and I think we see the Sixers do well with that perimeter shooting. And then I have the Celtics at number 4. I think if the Celtics still had Gordon Hayward, I think I'd put him up a little bit higher. But I just see Gordon Hayward. We saw what the Celtics were against the Heat without him, and I think that really hurts the Celtics. Even though he's injured, I don't know how it will be interesting to see what the Celtics do. And then at number 5, I have the Nets. I'm not a firm believer in the Nets right now. I'm not a huge believer in the combination of Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. I think that's just going to blow up in their faces. There are some young players, and I think they should have stayed the course with D'Angelo Russell, but so that's why I have them so low. Number 6, I have the Hawks. I really like what they did. They got Rajon Rondo. They got Chris Dunn, who's a good defensive player. They got Danilo Gallinari, and I think they've surrounded Trae Young, and they also have John Collins, and they also have Clint Capella. So I think it's a well-rounded team, and I can see them making the 6 if everything goes right. Then 7, I have the Raptors. They still have Fred VanVleet, but they lost Serge Ibaka and Marc Gasol, and I think that's huge. They're great defenders. Marc Gasol, a good three-point shooter. It will be interesting to see Pascal Siakam and how he bounced back, as some people had some criticism. Number 8, I have the Pacers. I think Victor Oladipo will be back, and I think they'll be able to push for the A spot. And in contrast to the West, the East, I don't. There are definitely some teams who are definitely aren't making it, but I think I could see a case for other teams, but I just have the Pacers there. What's yours, Austin?
I agree with the 1 seed. I see the Bucks being the best team in the regular season, especially because Giannis has something to prove after his new contract, and the Bucks want to show that they're the right choice for Giannis to stay. For number 2, I had the Celtics. I feel like with Jason Tatum's new added height, how all of them are starting to gel together. It's going to be the second year with Kemba, and even though they lost Gordon Hayward, I feel like they made some key additions. Otherwise, like Jeff Teague and all these other smaller players who've done well before and former All Stars and all that could really help them become a 2 seed. Number 3 of the Nets. Well, I don't know how well this is going to gel together. I am confident that Kyrie and KD and all the other players on their roster, like Joe Harris and them, will help this team be a 3 seed. I feel like they could win the third most games in the East, especially because it may be a weaker conference this season than I think a lot of people realize. For number 4, I have the Heat. I don't know if they have a roster that's capable of becoming a top 3 team in the East during the regular season, because of how their team's built, and they're going to have to prove me wrong on that. Number 5, I have the Raptors. They have championship pedigree, and they know how important it is for seeding. And them playing the Heat in the first round would be a very interesting showdown. I would have had them higher if they would have kept Serge Ibaka and Marcus Gasol. I may have had them as high as 2. However, those big losses definitely hurt them in my eyes, especially because I'm not too confident in their center right now. For number 6, I have the Sixers. I do like the addition of Doc Rivers. As I've said many times, he needed a new spot, and the Clippers need to move on. And he's one of the best coaches in the league still, and that doesn't change anything. But I'm not too confident in how this team's built. Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons cannot play together. And even if they get James Harden, I'm not too confident with the gelling, especially depends on who they trade. And they definitely would move up my list, maybe to 4 if they do get James Harden. However, I can't really predict what's going to happen. Number 7, I have the Wizards. I feel like Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal and Davis Bertans and Deni Adviha and all these players could really push for the playoffs. I feel like there are a couple years, there may be 1 year out of being really a premier contender if Deni Adviha and all their young players like Rui Hachimura and all them can contend to make themselves better and continue their success. But I mean, this team's really a wild card. They could be as high as 5 in my opinion, or as low as maybe like 12. But it really depends on how all their rookies and young players show out, and the addition of Russell Westbrook. We'll see how that works. Number 8, I agree with Kevin. I had the Pacers at number 8. They're another wild card team that I could see as low as maybe 13 and as high as maybe 4. It really depends on how Victor Oladipo comes back from his gruesome injury and how like Malcolm Brogdon, Domantas Sabonis, Miles Turner, and all these players come back from their season where they got swept for the second straight year.
Yeah, I agree with your assessment on the Wizards. I kind of took the more pessimistic route, as I'm not a huge fan of Russell Westbrook. While I love him as a player and as a person, I'm not a huge fan of how he can help a team. And I think he's going to hurt the Wizards, and I didn't really understand that trade from the Wizards side. But yeah, we stayed the same with the Pacers and the Raptors, and then we just I thought higher of the Sixers, and just I think you mentioned James Harden. I think if they got James Harden and were able to get rid of Simmons, I think that would be a great trade for the Sixers, because I agree with you. Simmons and Embiid cannot play together. I think you split time. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. I don't really know how the season's going to work out, especially because of all the things that are going on around with the world right now, and how the NBA picture has really changed a lot lately. Um, I don't know how most of these teams are going to do. These are mostly a shot in the dark, especially with teams like the Wizards who have lost key players, or the Sixers who have added a new coach. Or, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think you can say the same thing with the Hawks. They've added plenty of people, but will they be able to gel? And yeah, it's definitely interesting. And it seems a lot more even, sort of, in between all the teams, especially in the West. I think there's a case a lot of them can make the playoffs, but it would be definitely a great NBA NBA season. So I think that concludes the episode. So thank you for listening to our 22nd episode. Please check out our last episode where we discuss free agent acquisitions for Eastern Conference teams. Again, if this is your first time listening to our show, make sure to go check out our new trailer to learn what our podcast is all about. Also, for everyone, make sure you hit that subscribe button and click on the bell to turn on notifications to find out when we drop our next episode. Speaking of our next episode, we will give prediction. We will be giving out power rankings for the NFL, as a lot has happened and we got to rank them again. So thank you.